I came back from my business trip earlier than expected. I didn't tell anyone I was returning. I wanted to surprise my husband. When I arrived on our street, I saw several cars parked in front of our house. The garden was decorated with blue and pink balloons. A banner read, "Welcome our little miracle." The rain hammered against my hotel room window like bullets. Each drop was a reminder of the storm that had, in a single evening, become my life. 3 hours ago, I was Judith Miller. I was a successful marketing executive. I was a loving wife, a devoted daughter. 3 hours ago, I actually believed in happily ever after. Now, I just sit here, in this generic, beige hotel room, staring at my wedding ring. This simple gold circle. It once symbolized eternal love, commitment, a partnership. Now, it's just a piece of expensive metal, and it feels like it's mocking me. My hands are shaking as I twist it. I twist it off my finger for the first time in 5 years. The pale band of skin underneath, where the ring used to be, looks naked. It looks vulnerable. Just like me. The image keeps burning behind my eyelids. I close my eyes, and it's right there, brighter than the weak lamp on the hotel desk. My husband Gregory's hands. His hands, resting so tenderly on another woman's swollen belly. My best friend Diane's face. Her radiant smile, absolutely glowing, as she accepted congratulations and gifts. In my house. In my living room. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife ever could. It's a cold, hollow feeling that has settled deep in my stomach. But here's the thing. Here's what they don't know about me. Not really. Here's what they are all about to discover. I don't break. I rebuild. And when I'm done rebuilding, I destroy. This is my story. This is how I took back my power. This is how I made them pay. It all started just 24 hours earlier. I was rushing through Chicago O'Hare Airport. My heels were clicking, click click click, against that polished floor as I tried to navigate through the sea of people. The conference in Denver had been a huge success. We'd landed the client, and things had wrapped up a full day early. All I could think about was surprising Gregory at home. We'd been married for 5 years, but we'd been together for 7. We were college sweethearts. We built what I truly believed was an unshakable foundation. Sure, things had been strained lately. I won't lie about that. Gregory had been unemployed for 8 months, ever since his marketing firm had what they called a major downsizing. The financial pressure was all on me. The mortgage, the car payments, the utilities, everything. My salary had to cover it all. But I loved him. I really did. I believed we were strong enough to weather any storm. How naive I was. How truly, blindingly naive. I remember calling my assistant, Marilyn, from the airport gate, my carry-on bag digging into my shoulder. "Marilyn," I said, "cancel my Monday meetings. I'm flying home early. I want to surprise Gregory." "Oh, that's so sweet, Mrs. Miller," she'd said. Her voice was always so cheerful. "He's a lucky man to have you." Lucky. The word tastes like bitter acid in my mouth now. The flight felt endless. I sat there in my window seat, watching the clouds, just imagining Gregory's face when I walked through the door. I thought maybe we'd order takeout from that little Thai place he loved. We'd watch a movie, cuddle on the sofa. We'd talk. Maybe he'd had some luck with his job interviews. Just normal couple things. Happy couple things. While we were waiting on the tarmac, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend, Diane. "Can't wait to see you when you get back. I have news." I smiled. I actually smiled, right there in my seat. I typed back, "Me too. Home tomorrow night. Let's catch up then." If I had known what her news was, if I had any idea that it would shatter my entire world, I would have told the pilot to turn the plane around. I would have stayed in Denver forever. The taxi pulled up to our street just as the sun was setting. It was casting these long, orange shadows across our suburban neighborhood. We'd bought our dream house here 3 years ago. Well, that's not entirely true. I had bought our dream house. The mortgage was entirely in my name. The down payment had come from my savings. It was paid every single month with my salary. Just like everything else in our life. But something was wrong. Instantly, my stomach clenched. Cars lined both sides of the street. Not just a few cars. A lot of them. I recognized my mother's blue sedan. My mother-in-law, Eileen's, silver SUV. I saw at least 6 others that I knew belonged to our friends. Our mutual friends. A few of our neighbors were standing on their porches, just looking toward our house with these curious, quiet expressions. My heart started pounding. A hard, fast thud against my ribs. The taxi got closer. And then I saw it. Colorful balloons. They were bobbing in our front yard. Pink ones and blue ones, tied to the mailbox. More were scattered across the porch. And a large banner stretched across our big front windows. Welcome our little miracle. My blood ran cold. The taxi driver glanced in his rearview mirror. Looks like someone's having a party at your place, he said, trying to be friendly. Yeah, I whispered. My mouth was suddenly completely dry. Looks like it. I paid the fare with trembling hands. My fingers fumbled with the cash. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, pulling my suitcase behind me. The little wheels scraped against the concrete, and the sound felt deafeningly loud in the quiet street. The sound of laughter and music drifted from inside the house. My house. The house I'd been paying for, all by myself, while Gregory looked for work. Pink and blue balloons. A baby shower banner. My best friend Diane's text echoed in my mind. I have news. Oh, no. No. No, no, no. This couldn't be happening. I walked up the driveway on legs that felt unsteady, like I was walking through quicksand. Each step was heavier than the last. Through the living room window, I could see people inside. I saw them holding drinks. I saw piles of gifts on the table. I saw my mother, Brenda, standing near the kitchen, laughing at something someone had said. My father, Roger, was sitting on our couch, the one I picked out, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. I reached for the front door handle. My key was already in my hand. But I paused. I just stood there on my own welcome mat, frozen. Some instinct, some deep, primal survival mechanism, was screaming at me. It was telling me that once I opened this door, everything would change forever. The smart thing would have been to turn around. Get back in a taxi. Go to a hotel. Call Gregory and demand an explanation. Instead, I turned the key. I pushed the door open. And I stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Vanilla cake and coffee. The scent of celebration. Yellow and green streamers hung from the ceiling. Our coffee table, my coffee table, was overflowing with wrapped gifts in soft pastels. But it was the sight in the center of the room that stopped my heart. Diane. My best friend Diane. She was sitting in my favorite armchair. The plush, oversized one I'd saved for months to buy. She was glowing. She was wearing a flowing maternity dress that showed off her very, very pregnant belly. 7 months, maybe 8. She was opening gifts. A circle of women I knew, our mutual friends, my family members, were all cooing over tiny clothes and baby bottles. And there, kneeling beside her chair, was my husband. Gregory. His hand rested protectively on Diane's stomach. His face was lit up with a kind of pure joy, a blinding happiness that I hadn't seen on him in over a year. He helped her unwrap a little blue box. The tender way he touched her. The intimate smile they shared. It was everything he used to give me. Before the unemployment. Before the distance. Before whatever this was. For a long moment, nobody noticed me. I was just standing in the doorway of my own home, in my business suit, holding my suitcase. I was invisible, watching my entire life implode in real time. Then, Diane looked up. Our eyes met. Her face went white as a sheet. The little blue onesie she'd been holding just dropped from her fingers. Judith, she whispered. The room fell silent. The music, the laughter, everything just stopped. Every single head in that room turned toward me. My mother's face drained of all color. My father started to stand up, then just sat back down, looking helpless. My mother-in-law, Eileen, just stared at me. She didn't look guilty. She looked almost like defiance. But it was Gregory's reaction that finally broke something inside me. He didn't jump up. He didn't look guilty, or ashamed, or sorry. He didn't even remove his hand from Diane's belly. He looked annoyed. Annoyed that I had interrupted his party. Judith, he said, his voice flat. You're supposed to be in Denver until tomorrow. Like I was the one in the wrong. Like I had made a scheduling error. I finally found my voice. It came out as barely more than a whisper. Surprise. The silence in that room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even had the decency to look embarrassed. They just stared. Finally, my mother, Brenda, cleared her throat. She took a step toward me, her hands fluttering nervously. Judith, sweetheart, maybe you should sit down. We can explain. Explain. The word exploded out of me. Explain? My voice was suddenly loud, sharp enough to make several people flinch. Explain what, Mom? Explain how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working my ass off to support him? Explain how you are all here, celebrating in my house like this is perfectly normal? Diane struggled to her feet. She put one hand on her back, wincing. Judith, please, she said, her voice trembling. It's not what you think. It's not what I think. I laughed. It was a sound I didn't even recognize. It was harsh and ugly, and it came from somewhere deep inside me. What I think is that you are 7 months pregnant with my husband's baby. What I think is that while I've been traveling for work, breaking my back to keep this household afloat, you two have been playing house behind my back. What I think, I said, my voice rising to a shout, is that my entire family and all of my friends knew about this, and nobody thought to tell me. We didn't want to hurt you, my father, Roger, said quietly from the couch. You didn't want to hurt me? I turned on him, hysteria creeping in at the edges of my voice. So instead, you decided to let me find out by walking into a baby shower in my own home? This was your better option? Gregory finally stood up. But he didn't move toward me. He positioned himself, just slightly, between me and Diane. Like he was protecting her from me. In my own house. Judith, you need to calm down, he said. His voice took on that low, patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. The one he used when he thought I was being emotional. This isn't good for the baby. The baby? I stared at him, in complete disbelief. The baby? What about your wife? What about me? Things between us haven't been good for a long time, Judith, Gregory said, crossing his arms. We both know that. My jaw dropped. Diane and we have something real. Something you and I lost a long time ago. He called her Diane. Not Rose, the pet name I'd used for her since college. He used her full name, like he was distancing himself from our shared past. No, wait. I'm confusing, wait, no. Her name is Diane. My mind was scrambling. He called her Diane. He said it with such ownership. I looked around the room. I looked at every single face. My mother, my father, my mother-in-law, Eileen. Our friends. People I'd had over for barbecues. People I'd helped move. People I trusted. Not one of them was looking at me with sympathy. They were looking at me like I was the problem. Like I was the one disrupting their perfect little celebration. How long? I asked. My voice was deadly quiet now. The hysteria was gone, replaced by something cold and hard. Gregory and Diane exchanged a look. A guilty, shared look. How long have you been sleeping together? Judith. Diane started, reaching a hand out. How long? I demanded. Gregory sighed, like I was inconveniencing him. A year, he said. A year. A full year. While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat. While I was paying the mortgage, the car payments, the groceries, his health insurance. While I was believing his lies about job interviews and networking events. And everyone knew? Silence. That was my answer. Everyone knew. And nobody thought to tell me. My mother, Brenda, stepped forward again. Sweetheart, we thought it was better if it came from them. Better? I turned on her, and the fury I felt was so pure, so hot, it was a miracle I didn't just burst into flames. You thought it was better to let me live a lie? To let me support a man who was cheating on me with my best friend? You have to understand, Eileen, my mother-in-law, spoke up for the first time. Her voice was cold, sharp. Gregory and Diane, they're in love. Real love. And now they're having a baby. That baby deserves a family. That baby, I said slowly, tasting every word, has a family. A father who can't hold down a job and a mother who stabs her best friends in the back. Judith, my mother gasped. That's enough. No, I said, looking around the room one last time. What's enough, is this. All of this. I turned and walked back toward the door. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. Where are you going? Gregory's voice stopped me. I turned back. And for the first time since I'd walked in, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the scariest smile I've ever felt on my own face. I'm going somewhere I won't have to look at any of you traitors. Judith, you're being dramatic, Diane said, and now the tears were starting to flow down her cheeks. The audacity. We never meant for this to happen. It just did. But we can all still be friends. I laughed again. That same, harsh sound. Friends? You think we can be friends? The baby is going to need aunts and uncles, she pressed on, her voice getting watery. And Gregory will always be in your life. We have to find a way to make this work. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my voice dripping with a false sympathy that made her step back. You have no idea what you've just done, do you? You think this is about a baby? About love? You think you've won something here? I looked at Gregory. I memorized his face, confused, annoyed, entitled. In a few months, he was going to look very, very different. You want to know what you've won, Gregory? I said, my voice clear and carrying across the silent room. You've won your freedom. Complete freedom. Freedom from me. Freedom from my money. And freedom from the life I built for us. Congratulations. I walked out of that house. I didn't look back. I could hear them calling my name. I could hear my mother crying, and my father shouting for me to come back and talk about this. I had nothing left to say to any of them. But I had plenty left to do. If you're still listening, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. It lets me know you're still here, and honestly, it means the world to know you've been on this journey with me. Your support is a huge encouragement. Please, comment the number 1 so I know you're here, and now, let's get back to the story. The Marriott downtown wasn't fancy, but it was anonymous. The walls were a dull, beige color. The art on the wall was a generic picture of a boat. It was perfect. I checked in using cash for the room and a credit card they didn't know about. It was one I'd opened years ago, just for emergencies. I suppose this qualified. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, still in my business suit. I stared at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I looked pale. Shocked. Broken. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and my laptop. The shock was wearing off, and something else was taking its place. It was a cold, clear focus. The kind I get right before a major product launch. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for, Arthur Vance. He was the lawyer who'd handled our house purchase 3 years ago. I'd kept his card because something about him impressed me. He was sharp, ruthless, and he didn't seem to believe in playing fair when the other side had already thrown out the rule book. It was almost 9 p.m. on a Friday night, but I called anyway. Vance Law, a tired but alert voice answered. "This is Arthur." "Mr. Vance, this is Judith Miller. You handled a real estate transaction for me 3 years ago. I need to file for divorce. And I need to do it fast." There was a pause. I could hear him shifting in his chair. "Mrs. Miller, it's pretty late. Are you sure you don't want to sleep on this? A divorce is a big decision. My husband has been cheating on me with my best friend for over a year. She is 7 months pregnant with his baby. I just found out 3 hours ago when I walked into a surprise baby shower in my house. The house I pay for. Everyone I trusted, including my entire family, knew about it and said nothing. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice steady, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Another pause. Longer this time. Can you be in my office first thing Monday morning? Can't we do something sooner? This weekend? Mrs. Miller, I appreciate that you're upset, but... I'm not upset, I interrupted. I'm strategic. And right now, I have the advantage of surprise. In 12 hours, they're all going to realize I'm serious about this, and they're going to start taking precautions. Gregory will start trying to move money he doesn't have. I want to move while they're all still thinking they can talk me out of it. There was a long silence. Then, I heard the sound of a calendar page turning. I'll meet you at my office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Saturday. Bring every financial document you have. Thank you. And Mrs. Miller, he said, just before I hung up. Don't do anything rash tonight. Don't confront anyone. Don't make any big financial moves. Let me handle this properly. I hung up without promising anything. Because I was absolutely about to make some big financial moves. I spent the rest of the night in that beige hotel room with my laptop, 3 cups of terrible, bitter coffee from the in-room machine, and a growing sense of purpose that felt better than anything I had felt in months. First, I logged into our joint bank account. Gregory had access to it, but I was the primary account holder. I was the only one who ever deposited anything into it. My salary was direct deposited there every 2 weeks. I looked at the balance, $14,700. It was all legally my money. I'd earned every single cent of it. I clicked transfer. I transferred every penny into my personal savings account, the one he didn't know about, the one I kept for emergencies. The joint account now had a balance of 0. Next, I called the automated line for our credit cards. All of them were in my name, of course. Gregory's credit was terrible, so I'd added him as an authorized user. I went down the list. One by one, I reported his cards as stolen. Then I just canceled the accounts entirely. Every single one. Then, I called the mortgage company. This was the big one. I navigated the automated menu until I got a human being. Since the loan was in my name, and my name only, I had the right to make changes. Yes, I said, my voice polite and calm. I'd like to add a note to the account. All future communications should come to my office address only, not my home address. The representative confirmed. Also, I added, I need to request that all automatic payments be suspended immediately. I will be handling payments manually from now on. Yes, ma'am. That's done. By dawn, Gregory's world was about to become very, very different. But I wasn't done. I called my office voicemail and left myself a message to contact HR first thing Monday. I needed to change my emergency contact information and, more importantly, my beneficiaries. I also made a note to call our insurance company. I needed to know how fast I could remove Gregory from my excellent health plan. Every single safety net I had built for him over 5 years of marriage was about to disappear. As the sun came up over the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Real power. The kind that comes from finally seeing clearly after months of living in a fog. My phone had been buzzing all night. Non-stop. Calls and texts from Gregory, from Diane, from my parents. I hadn't read any of them. But now, I opened the message thread. Gregory, Judith, where are you? We need to talk. Gregory, you're being crazy about this. Come home. Gregory, I know you're upset, but you can't just disappear. Gregory, seriously, where the hell are you? Pick up. Mom, sweetheart, please call me. We love you. This is all a misunderstanding. Dad, don't do anything you'll regret, Judith. Think about your family. Diane, Judith, I am so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. Please let me explain. Diane, the baby needs stability. We all need to figure out how to move forward together. I deleted every message without responding. At exactly 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, I was sitting in Arthur Vance's office. It was dark wood, leather chairs, and smelled like old books. I had a thick folder of financial documents and a yellow legal pad covered in my notes from the night before. He looked at me over his reading glasses as I laid out my list of actions. You've been busy, he said, one eyebrow raised. I'm just getting started. Mrs. Miller, I have to ask, he said, steepling his fingers. Are you sure you want to go scorched earth on this? Sometimes in cases like these, mediation can. I interrupted him. Mr. Vance, let me be very clear. My husband has been unemployed for 8 months. In that time, I have paid our mortgage, our car payments, our insurance, our groceries, our utilities, everything. My salary has been our only income. He has contributed nothing. Meanwhile, he has been having an affair with my best friend and got her pregnant. My entire family knew about it and said nothing. I leaned forward in my chair. They had their chance to do the right thing. Now it's my turn. What are my goals here? I want him to get nothing. Not 1 penny of alimony. Not 1 cent of my retirement accounts. Not 1 piece of furniture from that house. I want him gone. And I want him to understand that actions have consequences. He nodded slowly, a small smile playing on his lips. The house is entirely in your name, you said. Bought before the marriage? No, I corrected. I bought it during the marriage, but with my own income, and the loan is in my name only. He never signed a thing. And your retirement accounts? All mine. My 401k from my job. I was the only one contributing. This might be easier than I thought, he said, making notes. Illinois is an equitable distribution state, but given that you kept most assets separate and he contributed so little financially, we can definitely work with this. This is good. There's something else, I said. I want this done fast. I don't want to drag this out for months. How fast? How fast can it be done if he doesn't contest it? If he agrees to everything, Vance said, 6 weeks, maybe 8. And if he fights it? Could be 6 months. Or more. A nasty divorce can drag on. I smiled. The same cold smile from the night before. He won't fight it. Trust me. He can't afford to. I didn't go home that weekend. I stayed in that hotel, eating room service, and planning. I felt like a general mapping out a campaign. On Monday morning, I went to work as usual. I put on my best suit, did my makeup, and walked in with my head held high. My first stop was HR. Sandra, I said to the HR manager, closing the door to her office. I need to make some changes to my emergency contact information and insurance beneficiaries. Oh, of course, she said, pulling up my file. Is everything all right? I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice perfectly level. Her expression shifted instantly to one of professional sympathy. Judith, I'm so sorry. What do you need from me? Within an hour, Gregory was removed from my health insurance. He was removed from my life insurance policy. He was removed as the beneficiary of my 401k. My emergency contact was changed to my Aunt Peggy, the only family member who hadn't been at that baby shower. Then, I went back to my office, closed the door, and called the mortgage company again. Hello, I said. I'd like to know what happens if I stop making payments on my mortgage. The customer service representative paused. Well, ma'am, you'd be in default after 30 days. And we would begin foreclosure proceedings after 90 days. And if I wanted to sell the house quickly? Are you having financial difficulties, Mrs. Miller? We have programs. No financial difficulties, I said. I just want to know my options. I took notes on everything she told me. By Tuesday, Gregory was starting to feel it. He began calling my office. Mrs. Miller, my assistant, Marilyn, buzzed me, her voice careful. There's a Gregory Miller online too. He says he's your husband. Tell him I'm not available, Marilyn. I'm in a meeting. An hour later, Mrs. Miller, he's online too again. He says it's an emergency. I'm still in that meeting. He's called 4 times today, Marilyn told me at the end of the day, looking worried. Then tell him I'm not available 4 times. And from now on, please just send him to my voicemail. On Wednesday, he started showing up at my office building. The lobby security guard called my desk. Mrs. Miller, there's a gentleman in the lobby demanding to see you. A Mr. Miller. He seems very agitated. Tell security to escort him out, I said, my voice cold. And if he comes back, they have my permission to call the police. On Thursday, the divorce papers were served. Arthur Vance called me around 10 a.m. Judith, the papers were served this morning at the house. Your husband has 30 days to respond. How did he take it? According to my process server, Arthur said, he seemed shocked. Kept saying there had to be some mistake. Any word from his lawyer? He doesn't have one yet. But give it time. He'll have to find one. I hung up and got back to work. I had a campaign to finish and a life to rebuild. By Friday, I had my answer about whether Gregory would fight the divorce. He was waiting in the parking garage when I left work. Judith, he stepped up from behind a concrete pillar, and I was struck by how terrible he looked. His hair was unwashed. His clothes were wrinkled. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Gregory," I said, and just kept walking toward my car. I had my keys in my hand, held like a weapon. "We need to talk," he said, hurrying to catch up. "We really don't. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage without even having a conversation." I stopped. I turned around, right there under the flickering fluorescent lights of the garage. 5 years of marriage? When exactly were we married, Gregory? Because for the past year, it seems like you've been married to someone else. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, my voice rising, is me working 60-hour weeks to support a man who was cheating on me. What's not fair is finding out about it at a baby shower in my own house. What's not fair is having my entire family lie to me about your affair. Look, I know how this looks. How this looks? I laughed. It looks like you've been screwing my best friend and got her pregnant. Because that's exactly what happened. It's more complicated than that. No. It really isn't. I started walking again, but he followed me, grabbing my arm. I yanked it away. "The baby's due in 2 months," he said, his voice desperate. "Diane needs support. I can't just abandon her." "And I couldn't just abandon you when you lost your job," I shot back. "But here we are." "That's different." "Is it?" I reached my car and turned around one last time. "You made your choice, Gregory. You made it when you decided to cheat on me. You made it when you decided to get another woman pregnant. You made it when you decided to let everyone I love keep your dirty little secret. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." You're really going to divorce me?" he stammered. "I already am divorcing you. You've been served. You froze our accounts. I can't access any money." "They weren't our accounts, Gregory," I said, enunciating every word. "They were my accounts. With my money. That I earned. I need money. For food. For gas. Then get a job." "Judith, please," he begged, his whole demeanor crumbling. "I know I screwed up. I screwed up, okay? But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I just stared at him. The man I'd loved. "There is no we anymore, Gregory. There's you, and your pregnant girlfriend, and your baby. That's your family now. Deal with it." I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away, leaving him standing alone in the parking garage. That night, I called my Aunt Peggy. She was my mother's younger sister, and the only family member who lived out of state and hadn't been at that party. "Judith, sweetheart," she said, her voice warm and gravelly. "I was wondering when you'd call. I heard what happened." "You heard?" "Your mother, Brenda, called me. She's worried sick about you." I felt my spine stiffen. "Are you going to try to talk me into forgiving him, too?" There was a pause. "Baby girl," Aunt Peggy said, "I've been married 3 times. 2 of those men cheated on me. You want to know what I learned?" "What?" "A man who cheats on you when you're supporting him isn't a man worth keeping. He's a parasite. And family who knows about it and doesn't tell you? They aren't family worth having." I started crying. For the first time since this whole thing began. Not quiet tears, but big, ugly, gasping sobs. "You come stay with me for a while," Aunt Peggy said, her voice firm. "You pack a bag, and you come to my house. And don't you dare feel guilty about protecting yourself." I moved in with Aunt Peggy the following week. She lived in a cozy little townhouse about 20 minutes from my office. It smelled like cinnamon and old books. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. We'd sit in her living room at night, watching old black and white movies, drinking tea. "How are you handling the money situation?" she asked over coffee one morning, buttering a piece of toast. "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, "if you were supporting Gregory, and now you're not." I smiled. "That's the beautiful part, Aunt Peggy. I'm not handling the money situation. He is." By the third week after I'd served him papers, the reality of his situation was starting to sink in. I knew this because Marilyn at my office had been fielding increasingly desperate calls. "He called 6 times yesterday," she told me, looking concerned. "He sounded pretty upset." "What did he want?" "He wanted to know when you were going to stop this nonsense and come home." I told him you weren't available. Then he asked if I knew where you were staying. I told him that wasn't my business to share. "Good. Thank you, Marilyn." What Gregory didn't know yet was that I'd also called the mortgage company and requested a payoff quote. The house was worth about $180,000, and I owed $140,000. I could pay it off entirely and sell it, or I could just let it go into foreclosure. Either way, he was going to be homeless soon. The first sign that reality was hitting the rest of the family came in the form of a call from my mother. "Judith, you have to stop this," she said, without any preamble, when I answered the phone. "Stop what, Mom?" "This. All of it. This divorce. Gregory is falling apart." "Good," I said. "That's a terrible thing to say, Judith." "Is it?" "Because I think it's a terrible thing to cheat on your wife with her best friend. I think it's a terrible thing to get her pregnant. People make mistakes." "He's sorry." "Mom, if you called to lecture me about forgiveness, you can save your breath. I'm not interested." "But what about Diane?" she pleaded. "She's 8 months pregnant now. The stress of all this isn't good for the baby." "Then maybe she shouldn't have gotten pregnant by a married man." "Judith." "No, Mom. You don't get to be shocked by my reaction. You were at that baby shower. You knew about the affair and you said nothing. You chose their side over mine. We never chose sides." "You absolutely did," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You chose to keep their secret. You chose to celebrate their baby, in my house, with my money paying for the roof over their heads. You chose everyone else over your own daughter." There was just silence on the other end. "I have nothing else to say to you, Mom." I hung up. But the calls kept coming. From my father, Roger. From my mother-in-law, Eileen, who told me I was being cruel and selfish. From mutual friends who thought I was being too harsh. Every single one of them seemed to think that because Diane was pregnant, I should somehow just be okay with the betrayal. That I should swallow my hurt and my anger and play the role of the gracious ex-wife who just wanted everyone to be happy. They were all about to learn just how wrong they were. 6 weeks after I'd filed for divorce, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Mrs. Miller, this is Jennifer from First National Mortgage. I'm calling because your account is now 90 days past due, and we need to discuss your options before we begin foreclosure proceedings." "Actually, Jennifer," I said, "I'd like to discuss selling the house." "Oh. Well, that changes things. Are you working with a realtor?" "Not yet. But I'm looking for someone who can move quickly. I can give you some referrals." I chose an agent who specialized in quick sales. I met her at a Starbucks. "I want the house on the market immediately," I told her. "Price it to sell fast. I don't care about getting top dollar. I care about getting it done." "What about your husband?" she asked, pulling out her forms. "Will he need to sign anything?" "The house is entirely in my name," I said. He has no legal claim to it. Oh, she said, visibly relieved. Well, that makes this divorce much simpler. Within a week, there was a for sale sign in the front yard. That's when Gregory finally called my office again, screaming at Marilyn until she put him through to me. You can't sell the house, he shouted, his voice raw. I can, I said calmly. And I am. Where am I supposed to live? Where are Diane and I supposed to live? That's not my problem anymore, Gregory. I have nowhere to go. You took all the money. You have Diane, I said. I'm sure she'll make room for you. She's living with her parents. There's no room for me there. I felt a small, dark spark of satisfaction at that. Then I guess you better figure something out. Get a job. Rent an apartment. That's what adults do. You can't do this. It's cruel. What's cruel, Gregory, is cheating on your wife. What's cruel is getting your wife's best friend pregnant. What's cruel is having everyone your wife loves and trusts lie to her face for over a year. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Now live with it. Judith, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. For just a moment, just 1 second. I wavered. This was the man I'd loved for 7 years. The man I'd planned to grow old with. Hearing him beg, it was harder than I'd expected. But then I remembered the look on his face when I'd walked into that baby shower. The way he'd positioned himself between me and Diane, like I was the threat. The way he'd talked about the baby while treating me like an inconvenience. You made your bed, Gregory, I said, my voice firm again. Now lie in it. With your pregnant girlfriend. I hung up. 2 days later, the house sold. The buyers were a young couple who could close in 3 weeks. They offered asking price. I signed the papers. I used the proceeds to pay off the mortgage entirely. The rest went straight into my savings account. I was now completely debt-free and had enough money to start over anywhere I wanted. But I wasn't leaving town just yet. I wanted to watch the rest of this play out. About 3 months after I'd filed for divorce, I ran into an old colleague at a coffee shop downtown. Sarah had worked at Gregory's old company before she moved to a different firm. Judith. How are you? She said, giving me an awkward hug. I heard about my divorce? I said, sipping my latte. I'm great, actually. Better than I've been in years. I'm glad, she said, looking relieved. You deserve better than, anyway. She paused, stirring her coffee. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I saw Gregory last week. Oh. I tried to look disinterested, but I was dying to know more. He applied for a job at my company. I was on the interview panel. How did it go? Sarah grimaced. Not well. Not well at all. He looked terrible, Judith. Like he hadn't slept in weeks. His suit was wrinkled. And when we asked about the 8-month gap in his employment, he got really defensive. He started talking about how his vindictive ex-wife had ruined his life and cut him off financially. I nearly choked on my latte. He said that? In a job interview? Oh, it gets worse. When we asked for references, he couldn't provide any recent ones, because apparently he's burned bridges with most of his former colleagues. And, this is the bad part, when HR called to verify his last employment, they found out he'd been let go for poor performance, not downsizing like he'd always claimed. Wow, I said. That was a new piece of information. Another lie. Yeah, Sarah said, shrugging. We passed on him pretty quickly. I felt bad, but we can't hire someone who badmouths his ex-wife in an interview and lies about his work history. It's a huge red flag. After Sarah left, I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, just processing this. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a liar. A bad employee. He was sabotaging himself at every turn, and he was blaming me for it. Perfect. That evening, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Judith? The voice was weak and crying. It's me. Diane. I almost hung up. But curiosity got the better of me. What do you want, Diane? I'm in the hospital. Despite everything, a small spike of concern shot through me. I'm human. What happened? Is the baby okay? The baby's fine. I'm fine, but... She started sobbing. Gregory's not here. What do you mean he's not there? You're in the hospital. I went into early labor yesterday, she choked out. I called him, but he didn't answer his phone. I had to call my mom to drive me to the hospital. I frowned. Where was he? Job hunting, apparently, she said, her voice bitter. But Judith, he's been gone for 3 days. He said he had interviews in Milwaukee and might need to stay overnight, but that was Sunday. It's Wednesday. And I think he's drinking again. What do you mean, again? He used to have a problem, she sniffled. In college. Before you two got serious. I thought he'd stopped. But lately, he's been coming back to my parents' house smelling like alcohol. And yesterday when I finally reached him, he sounded drunk. This was exactly the kind of karma I'd been hoping for. This was the justice. But instead of feeling satisfied, I just felt tired. And I felt a little flicker of pity. For her, not for him. Diane, I said, my voice flat. Why are you calling me? Because I don't know what to do, she wailed. My parents are already stressed about me living there, and now the baby's coming, and Gregory's disappeared, and I'm scared, and I don't have anyone else to. Stop, I said. My voice was sharp. Just stop. You don't get to call me for support. You don't get to make me your backup plan after you stole my husband. I know, but nothing. You wanted him, Diane. You fought for him. You got pregnant by him. You broke up my marriage for him. Well, congratulations. This is what you won. This is the man you chose. Judith, please. You called me your best friend for 10 years, I said, my voice cold as ice. And then you stabbed me in the back for a man who can't even be bothered to show up when you're having his baby. That's the choice you made. Now live with it. I hung up. And I immediately blocked her number. The divorce was finalized on a cold, gray Tuesday in February. It was exactly 4 months after I'd walked into that baby shower. I sat in the courthouse, next to Arthur Vance, watching as the judge signed the papers that officially ended my marriage. Gregory wasn't there. His lawyer, a court-appointed one, because as I predicted, he couldn't afford to hire his own, stood up. Your Honor, Mr. Miller is unable to attend. He is dealing with a family emergency. What kind of emergency? The judge asked, looking annoyed. His newborn son is in the NICU, Your Honor. Complications from the premature birth. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either. A baby in the NICU was serious, regardless of the circumstances of his conception. But then the lawyer continued, Mr. Miller is also currently seeking treatment for alcohol dependency. And there it was. The final domino. Arthur leaned over and whispered, Are you okay with proceeding without him here? Absolutely, I whispered back. The judge reviewed our settlement agreement one more time. It was exactly what I'd wanted. I kept everything that was legally mine, which, as it turned out, was nearly everything. The proceeds from the house sale, my retirement accounts, my car, my personal belongings. Gregory got nothing. Except his clothes and his debts. Mrs. Miller, the judge said, do you understand that this agreement means you will receive no alimony and you will owe no alimony? Yes, Your Honor. And you are satisfied with this arrangement? Completely, Your Honor. Very well. The marriage between Judith Miller and Gregory Miller is hereby dissolved. Just like that. It was over. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. The winter air was crisp and clean, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I could see my future clearly. So, what's next for you, Judith? Arthur asked, walking me to my car. I've been offered a promotion at work, I said, smiling. Senior Vice President of Marketing. It would mean relocating to our Seattle office. Congratulations. You taking it? I think so, I said, looking up at the gray sky. There's nothing keeping me here anymore. 6 months later, I was settled into my new life in Seattle. I had a corner office with a view of Puget Sound. I had a small but beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill. And for the first time in years, I was dating again. Nothing serious, but it felt good to remember that I was an attractive, successful woman who deserved to be treated well. I hadn't heard anything about Gregory or Diane since the divorce, and I was happy to keep it that way. But Aunt Peggy, who'd moved to Portland to be closer to me, occasionally brought news from Chicago. Your mother called me last week, she said over dinner at my favorite seafood place. Oh. I sighed. Let me guess. Gregory's doing terrible and it's all my fault. No, actually, Peggy said, sipping her wine. She wanted me to tell you, she wanted to apologize. I nearly dropped my fork. What? Apparently, Diane finally told them the whole truth about how the affair started. Which is? Peggy pulled out her phone and squinted at her notes. According to your mother, Diane admitted that she pursued Gregory. Aggressively. Started showing up at your house when she knew you were traveling. Bringing him food, offering to help with job applications. Your mother said Diane told her she'd been attracted to Gregory since college, but never acted on it until she saw an opportunity, when he was vulnerable and you were busy. I felt a strange mix of vindication and disgust. So she's admitting she deliberately broke up my marriage. Gets worse, Peggy said. She also admitted that she lied about the timeline. The affair didn't start a year ago. It started almost 2 years ago. Right after Gregory lost his job. 2 years. 2 full years. While I was working myself to death to keep us afloat. While I was comforting him. While I was making excuses for him. There's more, Peggy continued. Apparently, Gregory's been in and out of rehab 3 times since the baby was born. Diane finally threw him out permanently last month. She filed for a restraining order. Said he'd gotten violent when he was drinking. I sat back in my chair, processing this. Where is he now? Homeless, near as anyone can tell, Peggy said bluntly. Living out of his car when he can afford gas. Crashing at shelters when he can't. I should have felt triumphant. This was everything I'd wanted, wasn't it? Complete destruction of the man who'd betrayed me. But instead, I just felt empty. 8 months after my divorce was finalized, I flew back to Chicago for a work conference. I hadn't planned to see anyone from my old life. But fate, it seems, had other plans. I was walking out of my hotel on my last night in town, heading to my rental car. And I saw him. Gregory was sitting on a bench outside the Starbucks across the street. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. He'd lost at least 30 pounds. His hair was longer and unkempt, greasy. His clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in days. He was just staring at nothing, holding a cardboard cup. This was the man who had broken my heart. The man I'd loved for 7 years. The man I'd supported and trusted and believed in. He looked like a ghost. A hollowed-out shell. I should have walked away. I should have gotten in my car and driven to the airport without looking back. Instead, I found myself crossing the street. "Gregory?" He looked up. And I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His face went through a whole series of emotions, surprise, then shame, then a flicker of hope, then just despair. It finally settled on resignation. Judith. I sat down on the other end of the bench. I kept my purse between us. He smelled like alcohol and cigarettes. I could see his hands shaking as he held his coffee cup. "You look..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "You look amazing. Success suits you." "Thank you." We sat in silence for a few minutes. The sound of the city traffic rushed by. "I heard about the baby," I said finally. "Congratulations." He laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "Congratulations. I haven't seen him in 2 months. Diane won't let me anywhere near him. She has a restraining order. Maybe that's for the best." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Probably." He took a sip of coffee. I really screwed up everything, didn't I?" "Yes," I said. "You did." He shook his head again. "I don't know what I thought. That the grass was greener, I guess. That if I could just start over. With someone who didn't know what a failure I was." "I never thought you were a failure, Gregory." "No, but I sure felt like one," he said, looking at his shoes. "You were so successful. So put together. And I was just this unemployed loser living off his wife's money. So, you decided to cheat on me with my best friend." "I decided to be selfish," he whispered. "I decided to take the easy way out instead of dealing with my problems." He finally looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. "I'm sorry, Judith. I know. I know that doesn't mean anything now. But I am so sorry." I studied his face. I was looking for the old charm, the manipulation he'd always been able to turn on when he needed something from me. But I didn't see any of that. I just saw a broken man who had destroyed his entire life through his own terrible choices. "She admitted that she came after you," I said. "Yeah. Took her long enough," he said, rubbing his face. "You want to know the really screwed up part? I knew you were the better woman. I always knew that. You were loyal and hardworking and honest. You were everything I wasn't. Then why, Gregory? Why?" "Because," he said, and his voice broke. "Because she made me feel like I was worth something. Like I was desirable, instead of just tolerated. She looked at me like I was a prize, instead of a burden." He laughed that bitter laugh again. "Turns out, when you get the prize, you realize it's not worth what you paid for it." I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Try to get sober. Again. Try to find a job, any job. Try to figure out how to be a father to a son I'm not allowed to see." "You could move away," I suggested. "Start fresh somewhere else." "With what money?" he said, gesturing to himself. "I can barely afford gas for my car, and that's when it's running." I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet. I had about $60 in cash. Without thinking, I just handed it to him. He stared at the money like it was a snake. I can't take this." "It's not a loan," I said. "It's not charity. It's just closure. You apologized. I believe you mean it. This conversation, this is the ending our marriage should have had. Civil, honest. Human. He took the money with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just try to be better. For your son, if not for yourself. I stood up to leave. Judith, his voice stopped me. Yeah? You were right, he said, looking up at me one last time. You were right to leave me. You were right about everything. I looked down at him, this broken shell of the man I'd once loved. And I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. I know, I said. Take care of yourself, Gregory. I flew back to Seattle the next morning with a strange sense of completion. Seeing Gregory like that, destroyed, desperate, alone, it should have felt like the ultimate victory. And in a way, it was. Justice had been served. Karma had done its work. But what felt even better was the realization that I no longer needed him to suffer for me to be happy. I had built a new life. A life that was entirely my own. A life where I was valued, respected, successful, and free. A life where I didn't have to support anyone who didn't support me back. That was the real victory. My phone rang as I was walking through the Seattle-Tacoma airport. It was my mother, Brenda. Judith, she said, her voice quiet. Aunt Peggy told me you were in Chicago. She told me you saw Gregory. I did. How are you feeling about that? I considered the question as I found my gate. Sad for him, I said honestly. Grateful for me. And ready to move on. Completely. I owe you an apology, Judith, my mother said, and her voice cracked. A real one. Not for Gregory, that's between you and him. But for not telling you. For choosing to protect him and his secret, instead of you. For making you feel like your reaction was wrong. Thank you, Mom. You're my daughter. I should have been on your side from the beginning. Yes, I said. You should have. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about it. I can forgive you, Mom, I said finally. But things are different now. I'm different now. I'm not going to pretend that what happened didn't matter. And I'm not going to go back to the way things were before. I understand, she said quietly. I hope you do. Because I like who I've become. I like the life I've built. And I am not going to compromise it for anyone, ever again. I'm proud of you, she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. I know I didn't act like it at the time, but I am so proud of how strong you've been. After I hung up, I sat in that airport gate, thinking about strength. For most of my life, I thought strength meant enduring. Putting up with things. Sacrificing for others. Making excuses for people who hurt me. Now I know better. Strength means knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. Strength means walking away from people who betray you, even when it's hard. Strength means building a life so good that you don't need anyone else's approval to feel complete. I'm telling this story from my home office, in my new house in the hills above Seattle. Through my window, I can see the Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. I'm about to meet my boyfriend, Walter, for brunch. He's a successful architect who owns his own firm. He's kind, he's emotionally mature, and he treats me like an equal partner. When I told him this story, he said exactly what I needed to hear. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm so grateful that it led you here. I haven't spoken to Gregory since that night outside the Starbucks. But I heard through Aunt Peggy that he eventually got sober. He found work at a warehouse outside Chicago. He sees his son every other weekend now. He seems to be trying to rebuild his life, responsibly. I hope that's true. Not because I've forgiven him, forgiveness is different from moving on, but because his son deserves a father who's present and stable. As for Diane, she tried to reach out to me about a year ago, through social media. A long message about making amends and rebuilding our friendship. I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges, once they're burned, should stay that way. My relationship with my parents is cordial. But it's distant. We talk on holidays and birthdays. It's not the close relationship we used to have, but it's an honest one. And that matters more to me now. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled the divorce. If I think I was too harsh or too unforgiving. They suggest that maybe I should have tried counseling. That I should have considered the baby. That I should have been more understanding about Gregory's struggles. To those people, I say this. I spent 5 years understanding Gregory's struggles. I spent 5 years being patient and supportive and forgiving. I spent 5 years making excuses for a man who was lying to me every single day. I gave him my loyalty, my trust, my financial support, and my love. In return, he gave me betrayal, humiliation, and pain. I owed him nothing after that. Not understanding. Not forgiveness. Not a soft landing for the consequences of his choices. What I owed was to myself. I owed myself protection. I owed myself respect. And I owed myself the chance to build a life with someone who would treat me the way I deserved to be treated. And that's exactly what I did. Sometimes, people call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice. Or better yet, as self-respect in action. I didn't destroy Gregory's life. He did that all by himself when he chose to cheat on me with my best friend. I simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of his actions. I stopped being his safety net. I stopped being his financial support. I stopped being his excuse maker. I stopped protecting him from reality. And reality, as it turned out, was harsh. But that wasn't my responsibility to fix. It was his responsibility to face. I learned something important through all of this. You teach people how to treat you. For 5 years, I taught Gregory that he could take me for granted, that he could depend on me no matter what, that I would always be there to clean up his messes. I taught him wrong. Now, I teach people something different. I teach them that I have boundaries. That I have standards. That I will not tolerate disrespect, or betrayal, or lies. I teach them that I am worth more than that. And you know what? They listen. I'm not the same woman who walked into that baby shower 3 years ago. That woman was too forgiving, too understanding, too willing to sacrifice her own happiness for other people's comfort. This woman, the woman I am now, is stronger, smarter, and infinitely happier. This woman knows her worth. And she refuses to accept less than she deserves. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or was this just justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all. And if this story resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like and share it. Thank you for listening. And so, this story leaves us with a powerful reminder: life has a way of testing our strength, not to break us, but to show us what we are truly capable of. Judith's journey was not just about loss, it was about rediscovering her worth, setting boundaries, and refusing to settle for less than she deserved. Her resilience teaches us that self-respect is not negotiable, and walking away from what no longer serves us is not a failure, but an act of courage. In the face of betrayal and heartbreak, she chose growth over bitterness, proving that even the deepest wounds can heal when we choose to prioritize our own happiness and integrity. Her story inspires us to reflect on the relationships we nurture and reminds us that true strength comes from knowing when to let go and rebuild. What about you? What lessons did this story spark in your heart? Share your thoughts below or simply comment good if this reflection resonates with you. Let's inspire each other to live with strength and self-respect.